I've been interested in exploring the material nature of the human existence. And I mostly did that through the concept of the uncanny, which has to do a lot with these in-between zones, these liminal zones of transition, basically raise the age-old questions such as where does the non-human end and where does the human begin and vice versa, and then apply that question to all aspects of our being. Typically the voice, because that tends to be the sonic representation of our human image, which can be directly applied to music. And I take that and I analyze that and I try to transform that into something a bit less human, ideally precisely in that uncanny zone where it sounds almost human but not quite, and then hopefully make the listener ask as well what was quote unquote human in that material to begin with.
Make me find
So far, it has mostly been the human voice, really. And then for example, in some pieces, I analyzed a certain voice recording and I, analyzed all the frequencies and derived harmonies out of those and tried to, transcribe that into instrumental music. So to make the instrumental sound of the ensemble sound like the human voice without actually using a human voice. Typically I start with a score, I write music, but the moment I start interacting with a performer for the first time, the moment the rehearsals start, for example, I find that the score is very much subject to change, and I'm very quick in eliminating ideas and to match them with the musicians' sensibilities. And then also through the past few years, I find it more and more that I tend to unburden my score from, let's say, unnecessary details or details that I do imagine, but I prefer to leave it as a blank for the musician to fill. If there is any chance, any possibility to meet with a performer, even if it's just one meeting, that defines the entire way I compose the piece. First of all, the concept behind it is based on this phenomenon called the uncanny valley, which was named by a roboticist named Masahiro Mori. And he basically describes the uncanny valley as a cognitive phenomenon in a way, about our perceptions of entities that very closely resemble human. The more an entity resembles a human being, the more we tend to have a positive affinity towards it until we arrive at that precise zone of transition, that uncanny valley, where the entity becomes almost human but not quite. And that suddenly creates this huge dip, the valley, where we are now in this zone of cognitive dissonance that is now a disturbing experience for us. I imagined this piece performed by the inhabitants of that uncanny valley, so beings who are neither human nor not human, non-human. They are enacting a ritual in 5 parts, and we as the audience take part in that ritual. Utrecht was the first place I went abroad to make music with other people, and that was definitely a defining experience, that my life would be more about music than anything else, basically, in terms of a career. So now going back to Utrecht again, more than 10 years later, almost seems like a milestone, and that I will say that that feels great in that sense.